Morning of the 4th day.
1. Decapitation. Part 0. You can always go higher, but at the very top, down is all there is. Part 1. It was a dreadful sight. If I were to compare it to something, let's see. Yeah, okay. Gruber Norbert's painting, The River. The same sort of creepy, marbled river ran through near half of Kanami's atelier. Seemingly, due to the previous night's earthquake, cans of paint lay scattered around the room, and the simple, iron pole shelf had fallen over as well. The earthquake had caused the shelf to tip, spilling cans everywhere, their contents dumped on the floor, and the river was the result. It was a feasible theory, and that's no doubt how it had happened. But while it was a bizarre enough spectacle on its own, the real issue lay on the opposite bank of the river. It was beyond imagination or speculation and couldn't be written off as the earthquake's doing. An earthquake capable of that didn't exist. The face-down body of a person lay on the floor, with a noticeable vacancy from the neck up. A headless corpse. A decapitated corpse. It didn't matter much what words you chose to describe it. It was what it was. The body with the missing head was clad in the same dress Kanami had been wearing the previous day. That exquisite-looking dress that Kanami had boasted would never get dirty while she was painting was now stained dark red with blood. It didn't look wearable anymore. What's more, there was no longer anyone to wear it. Or let's be more specific. The wearer was no longer alive. This is grotesque, I uttered reflexively. It went without saying, but the words just came out. The room smelled like paint thinner. Next to Kanami's fallen body were a wheelchair facing in a random direction and a single canvas. It was far away, so I wasn't sure, but the painting appeared to be my portrait. It was beautiful, a masterwork. Even from that distance, separated by the river, I could tell. I felt the shock with my body, not with my mind. In some ways, it was more disturbing than the sight of the decapitated corpse. I recalled what Kanami had said the previous day.
It's not art if you get to pick who looks at it.
Point taken. This one was it. Without a doubt, Kanami Ibuki was a genius, to the point that it made me tremble, and this made her death all the more devastating. It had been a long time since I had felt devastated by anything, but I was truly devastated by this. By Kanami's death. By Kanami Ibuki's death. Why? Yes, Kanami Ibuki was dead. I mean, who could stay alive after their head's been chopped off? Even Rasputin couldn't have survived a decapitation, and Kanami was a physically normal human being. Well, we shouldn't just leave her like this, I said, breaking everyone's silence. I looked over at Kunigisa. Sticking out her lower lip, she was looking at Kanami's body dubiously, quizzically. Was she skeptical about something? but now probably wasn't the time to be thinking about such things. If I had to give a reason for each and every one of Kunagisa's actions, I'd be spending my entire life doing nothing else. As I tried to take a step, she tugged at my arm.
Ii-chan, wait a sec.
Huh? Why?
The paint isn't dry yet.
Oh yeah. Crouching down and checking with the tip of my finger, I found that she was right. My middle finger turned marble-colored. But now isn't really the time to worry about things like that, I objected. There was a severed corpse right in front of us. To worry about dirtying your shoes at a time like this was beyond trivial.
Hey, I said wait.
Before I knew what she was getting at, Kunagisa took off that black coat of hers and tossed it in the middle of the river of paint. It was now like a stepping stone in the river. Wasn't that your precious coat?
The circumstances call for it.
I made to say something about her just tossing her memories off like they were nothing. But as she suggested, there was a bigger issue at hand right now. Besides, what's done is done. With little recourse, I jumped to the coat, then to the other side of the river. It had been quite a while since I'd last seen a headless body up close. I removed my sweatshirt and placed it over Kanami's upper body. I looked back towards the door, where everyone was standing, and slowly shook my head. I didn't need to open my mouth.
Everyone,
Iria finally said.
Could I have us all gather in the dining room? I think we need to discuss what we'll do from here on out.
With that, she made her way for the hall. The four maids, Rei, Akari, Hikari, and Teriko, quickly followed close behind. Finally, the other guests began filing out of the atelier. The last ones to remain in the room were Kunagisa, me, and Shinya. He was staring at Kanami's body, his face pale and blank. Shinya. Stepping back on the coat, I returned to the entrance side. Let's go. There was no point in staying here. But I dared not finish. Oh, yeah, right. His mind was off in a very different place. Despite his response, he made no attempt to move. He stood completely rigid, his mind unable to comprehend, refusing to comprehend the sight before his eyes. I understood how he felt. If the same thing had happened to Kunagisa, I probably would have been the same way. No, that's not right. I probably would have broken down and started screaming. I know that's hard to imagine for a guy like me, who, as Maki said, doesn't like showing my emotions. But that's probably what would have happened. In that respect, Shinya was truly admirable. He didn't look too good, but at least he hadn't broken down, and he could even speak. His mental faculties remained intact, albeit just barely. This is what separated him from me. I was just a kid. Shinya was an adult. I didn't know what kind of relationship Shinya and Kanami had, whether he was just her caretaker, or something more, or something less. However, remembering the sad look in his eyes the previous night, and seeing him now, I somehow understood.
Ii-chan, let's go ahead.
Kunagisa tugged my arm, this time to urge me to move. Yeah. And thus ended our tranquil lives on the island. Thus opened the next act. Part 2. The morning of the 4th day on the island had started extremely normal. Really, extremely normal. I awoke the same as always. By the time I got to Kunagisa's room, she was already awake and sitting at her computers. She said she was checking her email.
Do my hair,
she said, without so much as a good morning. I put the hair on the top of her head in 2 tails, what we called a twin tail. I figured it would be easy enough for her to undo it herself this time.
I feel like breakfast today,
she said, so we headed for the dining room. Peeking into the living room on the way, I found that Maki and Shinya were still there drinking wine. They must have been up all night drinking. They sure aren't paying their age any mind, I thought. But of course, I stayed quiet. Out of courtesy, I invited them to breakfast, and they accepted. The 4 of us entered the dining room. Sitting at the table were Akane, and, making a rare appearance, Iria.
Oh, what an unusual occurrence,
Iria also said.
To have everyone gathered like this even in the morning? Well, it feels like more than chance. Shall I call in the others? It would be nice to all do breakfast together.
She summoned the nearby Akari and asked her to go fetch Yayoi, who was no doubt in the kitchen, and the other maids. Well, I'll go fetch Kanami, Shinya said. She's probably all done painting by now anyway. I wonder if she's still sleeping. She doesn't get cranky in the morning, despite her lousy personality. He chuckled a bit at his own line and looked at me. Hope you're looking forward to seeing that picture, he said, and left the dining room. It would have been the first time Kunigisa and I had done breakfast with the entire group, but it never actually happened. When Shinya returned to the dining hall, what he brought was news of Kanami's death. Kanami's been murdered. That's how he phrased it anyway, and few dead bodies could express that better than that. There was no way she died of sickness or an accident, or even suicide. She was missing from the neck up. But still, a murder case. And not just a murder, but... Me? I was... Right. After dinner, I was with Kunigisa the whole time. I took a bath in her room. Then she said she was hungry, so we went to the living room. On the way, we ran into Akari. Isn't that right? Yes. In the living room we met Hikari, Maki, and Shinya. And then, the earthquake. There was an earthquake, right? We were in the living room until that earthquake occurred. After that, I took Kunigisa back to her room, and then I went to sleep. I woke up today at 6, and I've been with Kunigisa ever since. I tried my best to sound calm, even under everyone's gaze, An alibi check. Why we had to start with me, I don't know. But Iria had requested it, so there was no choice. It seemed she viewed me as the prime suspect. The dining room. Eating my slightly cold breakfast. No one else seemed to be able to eat after seeing the headless corpse, and indeed, I was feeling pretty squeamish myself. But Yayoi's cooking was so good, I couldn't just let it go to waste. The round table. Iria, Rei, Akari, Hikari, Teriko, Akane, Maki, Yayoi, Shinya, Tomo Kunigisa, myself. We were all sitting in our usual seats, with only economy seat at the 5 o'clock position empty. It would never be filled. Iria tilted her head at me a bit in response to my testimony. Then she glanced over at the 1 o'clock seat.
Hikari, is that true? Yes.
The maid nodded.
Up until the earthquake occurred. 1 o'clock was it? Yes, 1 o'clock. The 5 of us, including me, were talking the whole time. I can vouch for that. Did anyone get up and leave for a while? No.
Hikari said, with a bit of uncertainty.
I don't think so. Although, I couldn't say for certain. No one left,
Kunigisa said, coming to her rescue.
And I've got a perfect memory. Nobody left the living room. Is that so?
Iria closed her eyes.
In that case, you and Kunigisa, Sakaki, Himena, and Hikari can all account for one another up until the earthquake, is that right? How about after the earthquake?
I slept alone, so I suppose I don't have an alibi.
Thank you. Well, then, I suppose I should go ahead and give my alibi next. Last night, I was with Rei and Sashirono in my room talking. Yesterday's dinner was even more delicious than usual, so I was asking her about the recipes. Isn't that right, Sashirono? Huh?
Possibly because her name had suddenly come up. Yayoi looked a bit startled.
Yes.
Rei shrugged a bit, but said nothing. If you thought about it, she must have been a really cool-headed person, given the situation. Of course, Teriko was quiet as ever, but Rei was more taciturn than you would have ever imagined. Whether she was just being loyal to her employer, or this was just her natural personality, I wasn't sure.
The earthquake happened, and then I decided to go back to my room.
Yayoi said, as if struggling to remember.
That's right.
Iria nodded.
After that, Rei and I were up all night talking. Kunigisa will be leaving soon, so I thought we should discuss the idea of holding some kind of fun event. You know, like a farewell party. That's the tradition here. Anyway, we ended up foregoing sleep, so I just came straight here for breakfast.
In other words, Iria and Rei had perfect alibis. Yayoi, like Kunigisa and I, had an alibi up until the earthquake.
Shinya and I have complete alibis as well,
Maki said.
Kunigisa and the rest can confirm that up until the earthquake, and Shinya and I can vouch for each other after that. My, alcohol is just wonderful.
Just how trustworthy was a drunk person's testimony. Maki must have known I was thinking that, because she glared at me. But without a word to me, she turned to Shinya.
Isn't that right?
She asked. Yes, he replied vacantly.
Hikari, what did you do after the earthquake? I went back to our room. Hikari and Teriko were there too. After that, I went to bed. I woke up today at 5 o'clock and then got back to work. What about Akari and Teriko then? Akari, answer. After dinner, we didn't have any work left to do, so...
Akari paused with a hand to her cheek as she tried to think.
Teriko and I were together in our room the whole time. Then the earthquake happened and Hikari came back soon after that. That's when we decided to go to bed.
The three of you share one room? I asked. Akari's eyes shot in my direction, as if she never would have guessed I would speak up.
Yes, the three of us share a room. Is something wrong with that?
Oh, no. Nothing. Just wondering. I bowed to her. I wanted to ask if they shared the same futon as well, but I decided to stay quiet. That meant that Akari and Teriko had solid alibis up until the earthquake as well. After that, they had all gone to bed, so they couldn't really vouch for each other. Teriko nodded a bit after listening to Akari's testimony, but ultimately said nothing. It was a simple gesture, but somehow hard to understand.
This is becoming quite complicated.
Iria looked towards the last possible suspect, Akane Soniyama.
What about you?
She said.
What were you doing last night?
Akane, who had been soaking in the situation up until now with arms folded and mouth shut, let out a sigh and opened just one eye.
Judging from the fact that nobody's mentioned my name up until now, it's probably pretty obvious, but yup, I wasn't with anyone last night.
She spoke unhesitatingly.
After I finished dinner, I went back to my room and got on the computer. I was working on some modeling and, well, I'll spare you the boring details. There should be a log so you could check that for proof, but I suppose that kind of thing can be forged. I guess you couldn't call it an alibi. I don't know much about computers. What do you think, Kunigisa?
Kunigisa's head popped up. Hell of a time to be daydreaming.
Oh. With a degree of skill, a person could easily manipulate something as simple as a log. Akane, how much do you know about computers?
Akane smirked.
There's probably no point in my answering that. Oh, okay.
Kunigisa nodded.
Yeah, I guess you're right. With the right tools, even an amateur could alter a log. It's not like it's very hard. You can find that kind of software all over the place.
Isn't there a way to see if the log's been altered? I asked.
There is, but that can be faked too. Just about anything's possible with a computer, you see, so it's hard to use one to confirm an alibi.
Tomo Kunigisa, invited to this island as the leader of the team, she was peerless in her field, so there was no way she was wrong. In which case, Akane had no alibi to speak of. Akane let out another sigh.
But I suppose I have to make a defense for myself. I do hold myself dear, so I'll just go ahead and say it. I didn't do it. Certainly I hate artists, but I don't think they're worth killing. They're already dead when they're alive. It wouldn't be worth the effort. You can't pen this on me.
She probably meant to say, "You can't pin this on me." But at any rate, she didn't seem to be bluffing or playing tough, and it didn't seem like an act either.
Okay, everyone, please hold on a minute.
Iria requested.
I need to work this out in my head.
Before that, please hold on, I said to her. The conversation was growing bizarre. Hold on before we hold on? Iria, what exactly are you trying to do?
I'm sorry?
It's just that this all feels really strange to me. Of course, this is your island and your mansion, so I know it's probably better to not say anything. Plus, I'm not even really a guest. But I'm asking anyway. What exactly are you trying to do?
Well, I'm trying to get to the bottom of this, of course.
She smiled softly.
It seems pretty clear to me,
She continued.
that Ibuki was murdered by someone. And in this case, that means she was murdered by someone in this room. As you said, this is my island and my mansion. One of the guests I've invited here has been killed, and the murderer is right here. Surely you don't think we can just leave this alone?
She smiled and glanced over the crowd. Indeed, she was right. This was a remote island. A remote, solitary island. Completely isolated. Wet Crow's Feather Island. If there were 12 people on the island and one was killed, the murderer had to be one of the remaining 11. Even elementary school students can do that sort of basic arithmetic.
In any case, another death.
Huh? Another? Did she just say, another?
And another decapitation at that. Could it be that this island is cursed? Say, Himina, can you see into that? You're the one who's cursed.
Maki answered, without missing a beat.
The island is just an island. If anything is cursed, it's you.
As disheartened a statement as that was, Iria replied with amused laughter.
Maybe so.
Ah, it all made sense. It had seemed odd to me that despite her attitude, Maki was able to get along so well with everyone other than me. But now, I got it. Nobody else on this island cared about what other people said.
But this is a fairly simple case.
Iria remarked.
Maybe there's no need for detective work. After all, the time of the incident is pretty much laid out for us.
Is it?
It is. You saw it too, right? All that paint got knocked over during the earthquake, and Nabuki's body was lying on the other side. How wide do you suppose that river of paint was?
Nobody ventured an answer, so I went ahead. At a quick glance, I would say about 10 feet.
Right, it's certainly not small enough to jump over. So we can confirm that the murder must have happened before the earthquake.
The shelf had fallen over in the quake, resulting in that marbled river. What did that mean? The quake must have been more intense than I had realized. But that's not all. What did that river really mean?
Hold on a second,
Akane interrupted. She looked a bit concerned.
This conversation doesn't bode well for me. You know why?
Because everyone besides Akane had an alibi prior to the earthquake. I was with Kunigisa the whole time. Same with Hikari, Maki, and Shinya. Same deal with Hikari and Teriko. And of course, Iria, Rei, and Yayoi. Everyone had an alibi and could vouch for one another. Iria was right. There was no way someone could jump that river of paint the earthquake had created. There was no way to cross the river without stepping in the paint and creating footprints. In which case, the murder had to have happened before the earthquake. The only one with no alibi at that time was Akane. Indeed, this didn't bode well for her at all. She clicked her tongue and said,
Iria, I'm just going to ask you straight. Do you think I did it?
That certainly was straight,
Yes.
Iria admitted just as directly.
I mean, who else could have?
Akane broke eye contact with Iria and fell silent. She was at a loss for an effective argument despite that 7-fool's brain of hers. Feeling some sliver of a connection with her somehow, I wanted to jump in and save her. But if a member of the 7 Fools couldn't think of a rebuttal, there was no way a programmed dropout could. An awkwardness hung in the air for a while, but it was Kunigisa who broke it.
That's wrong,
she said.
I don't think that logic makes sense, Iria. Oh? Why is that?
Iria seemed strangely glad to hear it.
Ah, I see. You're talking about the possibility of an accomplice. I suppose there is that possibility. That would make everyone's alibis a little shaky. No, not that. Even if you don't consider an accomplice, you're missing something. Right, Ichan?
Huh? I blurted out, completely surprised that I would be pulled into this. Missing something?
Come on, Ichan, tell her about what happened last night.
Something happened? Last night? Looking fairly irritated, Kunigisa clammed up. This was a fairly rare thing for her. What can I say? Unlike you, I have a bad memory.
Geez, you really don't remember? Your memory isn't bad, it's non-existent. Is it even normal to forget something this important? After the earthquake, Shinya made a call to Kanami, right?
Oh.
Huh?
Right. Hikari and Shinya looked up in surprise, too. Right. Shinya had called Kanami after the quake and confirmed that she was okay. Confirmed that nothing had happened to her. Wow, that was important, just like Kunigisa said. What did that mean, though? How did things appear now?
In other words,
she explained,
Kanami must have been killed after the earthquake. Hold on a sec,
Iria said in a bit of a panic, her hand reaching towards Kunigisa.
But that river of paint... Well, Iria, that must mean this.
A brief pause.
The atelier was a locked room.
Everyone exchanged glances for a moment. That river of paint was unjumpable for sure. It was 10 feet wide. Maybe it was possible if you were a long jumper, but even then, there was no space to get a running start. If you considered that, the murder must have happened before the earthquake, just like Iria said. But then, Shinya denied it. Immediately after the earthquake, Kanami hadn't been murdered, let alone beheaded.
Sakaki,
Iria asked him.
Was that her voice for sure?
He looked pale and confused, but at last, he nodded. Yes, it was definitely Kanami. No mistake. She said she was busy, and that the paint had fallen over, so everything was a mess. She had to have been alive after the earthquake.
I heard him talking on the phone as well.
Hikari told her mistress.
He asked me if he could use the house phone, and I think she must have been alive still.
Yes, still. Shinya spat self-mockingly and clutched his head in anguish. If I had only gone to the atelier instead of neglecting my duties! Damn it! I'm scum! I'm nothing but scum! There wasn't much to say to that. Only that in the end, it wasn't earthquakes, or thunder, or fire that was frightening. It seemed there's some kind of solace to be found in regret. It serves as an escape from what's right before your eyes. you end up pinning all of your bad deeds on the former you. So it's hardly self-condemnation. When you are regretting something, you're technically being good. I'm not saying Shinya was a monster. People are just wired that way. If anyone was a monster, it was me, for only being able to nitpick at people's flaws like this.
This is starting to get strange,
Akane said, stroking her chin.
According to Shinya, Hikari, and Kunagisa's testimony, the murder can only have happened after the earthquake. But after the earthquake, the river of paint had already been formed, in which case there is nobody who could have killed her. Hence, yep, Akane.
Kunagisa interrupted with crooked lips. She had that look she gets when she's starting to find something interesting.
This is an incredibly strange situation. So, that's what you mean by a locked room.
Iria nodded, seemingly convinced.
Indeed. Even now that paint isn't dry. You can't traverse it and enter the room without leaving footprints. Say, Akari, where's the house phone in Ibuki's atelier? It's beside the window on a phone stand.
Akari answered with great certainty. Iria crossed her arms and considered this.
Kunagisa, you've posed this question, but I don't suppose you know the answer already? Do you know who did it? Nope,
Kunagisa answered with weird confidence. Of course, I didn't know either. Nobody knew. What about the window? Is it possible that the person entered through the window? Shinya asked. It was Hikari who answered him.
But it's the second floor. I don't think it's possible. I'm pretty sure that window is locked from the inside, so...
It can't be opened from the outside at all? I asked.
Probably not,
she replied. Check. So the window was impossible, and so was the door. It couldn't have happened before the earthquake, or after the earthquake. Which meant... Okay, we were at a complete dead end. Everyone fell into silence once more, and then eyes started shifting back towards Akane.
Huh?
She seemed a little surprised.
Hey, I thought I had cleared myself. Maybe not.
Iria said.
Clearing that paint river is impossible, right? So ultimately, it must have been before the earthquake. What about what Shinya said? He could have been tricked. Maybe it was an auditory hallucination or something.
An auditory hallucination? Nonsense. It was beyond nonsense. I had to say something. I think that's just what you want to believe.
I don't think so,
opined Iria, unfazed by my opinion.
Even supposing it wasn't an auditory hallucination, it could have easily been some other sort of misunderstanding. There's no crossing that river of paint. That much is for sure. Thus, it's only logical to presume the murder happened before the earthquake, in which case it couldn't be anyone but Akane. This isn't good,
Akane said, seeming truly worried despite her wry smile.
I know this probably won't help my case any, but I can't help but feel like Akari and Teriko's alibi is a little sketchy. I mean, family members vouching for each other? It wouldn't hold up in a court of law. We're not talking about a court of law,
Iria said flatly.
I didn't think so,
Akane said, as if she expected such a response.
Still, determining the criminal by process of elimination isn't quite fair to me. It's silly. And simply ignoring Sakaki's testimony isn't exactly what I would call logical thinking. It's selective thinking. Selective thinking?
Akane shot me a look, as if to say, will you please explain? A confirmation bias. I frantically recalled from my program training, desperate not to make a fool out of myself in my senior's presence. In other words, it means when you only consider testimonies and evidence that suits your opinion and write off all evidence to the contrary as some kind of fluke. Actually, for supernatural ability experiments, it's... My eyes wandered over to Maki. It's mentioned a lot. Dry love, was it? They obsess over any evidence that suggests these abilities exist, while ignoring any evidence that suggests they don't. It's their way of getting desirable results.
I don't really follow you.
I'd gone to all the effort to remember these things, and Iria wasn't even letting me finish. What a waste of breath.
I suppose Ibuki and I were on pretty awful terms.
I recalled their nasty bickering from the previous night's dinner. It didn't exactly do wonders for her case. Certainly, it wasn't only Akane's lack of an alibi that made Iria doubt her so much, but this as well. Of course, it wasn't that I didn't understand how Iria felt. If you took Shinya's testimony into account, even Akane couldn't be a suspect. An uncommittable crime. With no suspects, 1 victim, 0 suspects. The situation didn't make any sense, and thus, to fix it,
Sakaki's testimony seems a little shady after all,
Iria said, staring right at him.
Even if it's not a lie, it could be some kind of misperception or dream or some such. But I heard him talking on the phone,
Hikari said. Iria shook her head.
It's not like you heard Ibuki's voice, right? Sakaki is the only one who heard her voice directly, which means...
Come on, that's... Shinya started to protest, but as if realizing he had no basis for an argument, he went silent.
Well, if that's the way it is, I guess there's no choice but to suspect me. That's one way to look at things, anyway,
Akane said, almost as if she were talking about someone else. Even now, she didn't seem to be lying or acting. Akane Soniyama, ER3 system, 7 fools. She seemed all too used to this kind of pandemonium.
But still, you don't have any proof. Iria, even if you are the mistress of this island and this mansion, you wouldn't treat me like a criminal without any proof, would you? This may not be a court of law here, as you say, but it's not some dusty old detective novel either, right? You can't just assume I'm the criminal based on this unformulaic process of elimination and selective thinking. Nobody can do that. But, Soniyama, you also can't prove that you're not the criminal. You can't put it on the innocent to prove their innocence. Proving that something can't be proved doesn't constitute a proof. I'm innocent until proven guilty. You're talking law again.
Akane's shoulders slumped.
Well, what's your point, Iria? So I'm the prime suspect. Fine. That's absolutely right. I'm the only one with no alibi before the earthquake. Nobody could have entered the atelier after the earthquake. Sure, I'm with you on that too. Therefore, Sakaki's testimony becomes suspicious. Makes sense. So what now?
So, what now?
What should we do?
Iria looked around the table with a troubled expression. It seemed she hadn't thought any further than that. How anticlimactic.
Throw me to the police or whatever you want,
Akane said, brushing the bangs from her face. Akane of the 7 fools being sent off to the police?
I hate the police.
Iria stared up at the ceiling and looked only more lost.
What to do?
A heaviness filled the air once again. "Hey, Tomo," I whispered to Kunigisa.
What's up, Ichan?
"Isn't there some way to stop this Inquisition?"
There is.
"There is?"
Yeah, but
She looked at me.
you ought to say it, not me.
"All right." I nodded, then raised my hand.
Okay, speak up.
Iria called on me with a curious look. Ah, good. It would have hurt if she just ignored me. "I have a suggestion.
Yes?
How about using the room I've been staying in? It looks like you can only lock and unlock it from the outside. What if we kept Akane there for a while?"
Keep me there?
Akane eyed me dubiously.
Do you mean in prison?
"Not in prison, exactly. Not imprisonment. Just a brief quarantine. Iria, I think the biggest thing we have to fear right now is that this turns into a string of murders. Kaname was killed. Okay, that's already said and done. I hate to be so frank about it, but what's done is done. More important, we can't let anyone else die. The quickest way to deal with a situation like this is to quarantine the prime suspect. If Akane really is the murderer, naturally she won't be able to commit any more crimes. If, on the other hand, someone else used some kind of trick and managed to sneak in and kill Kaname after the earthquake, then that person would be brought to a standstill. After all, if they tried anything again, it would prove Akane's innocence." I looked around to see people's responses. In other words, creating a state of equilibrium so that the killer can't make a move. This includes Akane as well as everyone else. Our alibis are hollow if we consider the possibility of accomplices. The atelier may have been a locked room, but locks are made to be unlocked. There might have been some trick. There might have not been. Either way, it doesn't matter. Akane might have done it. Someone else might have. Just as I might or might not be the culprit. So I think the best thing we can do is create a situation where the killer can't do anything.
Ah, I get it.
Yayoi said, a bit to my surprise.
That makes a lot of sense. I'd have to say I agree. I don't think there's a very solid basis for suspecting Sonoyama. Iria's reasoning seems rather arbitrary.
Iria gave her a quizzical look. Nonetheless, Yayoi continued.
I don't think it's a bad idea. But you don't intend to just lock her up forever, right? In such an awful environment?
I was staying in that awful environment, damn it. Lousy bourgeoisie. Well, just until the police arrive, I explained. This may be a solitary island, but it shouldn't take more than a day or two to get enough investigators.
I'm not calling the police.
Iria cut in imperiously. Huh? Pardon me, mademoiselle. Did you just utter something insane?
I mean, what's the point? Even if we call the police, they'll just figure Sonoyama was the criminal and it'll end there. The police won't help one bit.
It wasn't Iria's words that I found suspicious, but her facial expression. The police won't help one bit? Why did she say that with such a stern face? But we can't just not call the police. If we didn't, there wouldn't be any point in establishing an equilibrium.
Not necessarily. We just have to piece things together while she's in there. We'll track down the real culprit with evidence and reason. Won't that do?
Will you be the one investigating, Iria? Something about her idea of reasoning didn't sit well with me at all, but to my surprise, she shook her head.
No, not me, of course. Don't you remember? I told you yesterday, didn't I? In a week, no, 6 days now, a wonderful, marvelous human being is coming to this island.
The proverbial detective of this mystery novel. Iria's favorite. Iria's hero.
Surely Aikawa will solve this situation so not a speck of it remains.
Not a speck of it. What an expression. And she didn't look like she was exaggerating either.
6 more days, huh?
Akane, who had fallen silent, said cynically, letting her crossed arms drop down beside her.
Well, whatever. Fine. Fair enough. I don't think I'm suspicious, but if this is what it takes to convince you, what can I say? Iria, I presume we can trust this Aikawa? Yes, of course.
Iria gave a confident nod. You could feel her utmost faith in this hero of hers just from looking at her. Akane let out one more big sigh.
Got it. Let's do this then.